The digital age has a lot to answer for. Of course, there are some huge benefits, but increasingly we're seeing the negative impacts of advancing technology on society.
Although technology was designed to bring us closer together and ensure we have information at our fingertips, it seems to have created more of a disconnect to ourselves, others, and the world around us. It's created a false world where we can escape reality, and so we believe it's never been more important we become aware of our usage and take responsibility for taking a digital detox.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, James.
And me, Claire. How are you all doing out there today?
Well, today we are going to be talking to you about the Digital Detox. We're massive fans of Digital Detox. We're going to go through some of the research, actually, and some of the shocking stats, and of course, wind up by giving you some tips on how to start digitally detoxing. So that's what we're covering today.
It's a bit of a mouthful. So James and I have like little brainstorming sessions about what to talk about on these podcasts. Some of you send your thoughts in, which is amazing. Keep on sending in anything you want us to talk about in more depth. So we've got some really exciting ones coming for you, actually. But this one was really born out of me going on my retreat, woohoo, in Scotland. So it was this week, a weekend ago. So I got back on.
And you had some great weather, didn't you, Claire? Unlike myself down in London, where we just had the gloomiest bank holiday ever, and we're recording this on another weekend, and it's still great. We're still being promised heat waves and sunshine, but it's never coming.
I think that's the way that they've kept us in the country. James and I have got a theory. I think it was my very intelligent theory that they kept saying, "Oh yeah, we've got summer coming. Wait for the heat wave," as a way to keep us all locked in the country waiting for
your staycation.
Yeah, exactly. So anyone that lives or resides or even went on holiday in Scotland will know that they had an amazing summer. I couldn't believe it when I got up there and started speaking to everyone. They said, "You haven't had a nice summer in London?" I was like, "No, we haven't at all." So it was really beautiful weather up there and just the most stunning environment. There were stone circles, so ancient stone circles, Celtic ground, babbling brooks, just gorgeous.
Red squirrels.
I went on a walk to a waterfall on my own up in the mountains behind where I was staying and conversed with a red squirrel, or at least I thought I was in my own head. I was doing like little squirrel noises, and I'm sure that's why he came closer. Probably looked completely mental to anyone else that might have been watching. But it was just really, really incredible to have a digital detox. Not only did I have an amazing time there and really reconnect with myself and the land and Mother Nature, but I decided to completely switch off my phone. I left it in a drawer. It's very strange not having that as your clock, actually, because I don't know where I watched. I didn't know what time it was. And it just really, really brought home what we're going to talk to you about today. But it was a beautiful experience to shut myself off, not document it, not even take photos. I mean, it was so beautiful. I kept being tempted to take photos. And I didn't. I was very present.
You were very present, and that's a beautiful thing. That's the thing, like when we're immersed in a screen, we lose our presence at the moment.
Yeah, you're kind of not participating in the moment. You're not fully there. Instead, you're behind a camera taking a photo of it. And, I just wanted those memories to stay with me, locked into my mind without just being on a phone. So, yeah, that's a kind of a bit of background about why we wanted to do this podcast.
And just as a coincidence, one of our lovely neighbours, actually, I was speaking to her in the street outside this morning, and she was like, actually, I must sort out my Facebook feed. I'm just getting unsettled by a lot of stuff in there, so I've got to go and clean it up, which is something we're going to talk about. But just an interesting coincidence there. And I said, haha, we're doing a podcast today on digital detox.
I think just one of the things we were learning a lot about Indigenous tribes. We were learning a lot about, I suppose, the old ways. It was in a perfect position on old Celtic ground. Just so much history, so much kind of immersiveness in our ancestors. It was just really, really beautiful. But we were talking a lot about how much has been lost. I don't think we have any idea, most of us in this modern world since digital era, of how much we have lost. We've lost our connection to ourself, our own emotions. It's definitely used as a distraction so that we don't feel our emotions. We've completely disconnected from how we're actually feeling because we use this as a distraction. We've lost a lot of connection to Mother Earth, I would say, and how that makes us feel and being present in the moment.
Before we get into this, though, obviously we're going to be focusing in this podcast on the kind of negative side of devices and digital and social media, but we must also acknowledge they do have a positive side to them as well. You know, we suddenly have, you know, all the information of mankind at our fingertips, which is incredible if you think about it, and it enables us to connect with people that we may never have met before. You're probably listening to this podcast on a device, so it is there. It's an enabler. The device, the digital technology, is an enabler. We just need to make sure that we're enabling it to work for us rather than against us, because it can often overspill into kind of an addiction that's unhelpful. Yeah,
you just get completely sucked into it, don't you? And before you know it was just a really stark contrast to come back actually on Tuesday, to come back and then even have to engage in it for work. And to get back into the digital world, I was like, oh my goodness, it really, really felt disjointed to me. It felt really uncomfortable to come back into the digital world that I'd left behind even 3 days earlier.
So, what are the negative sides of digital? Well, you've probably experienced them actually, and we're going to run through just some headline research and some interesting figures here.
Always with the research.
We like to research. So, more and more studies are finding that there's a correlation between heavy technology use and anxiety. And I guess that does not surprise a lot of people. You know, it's pulling us into another world. We're exposed to these threads of information. Like I was saying before, the positive side of technology is that all this information is available, but that can actually lead to an information overload, which in itself is an anxiety-causing state. It's worth noting as well that anxiety is tied to dopamine release we get when we receive stimulants, and our social media in particular has been geared up in a way to actually work with that and stimulate that.
What was the film? That was the
social network.
The social network or something.
So things like scrolling, you know, it's that continued looking for gratification, the next thing down. It's things like the notifications. It's things like receiving likes, things like receiving comments. All that stuff gives you a dopamine release. Even receiving a text message on your phone, you know. I challenge you, if you put your phone face down and you get someone to ping you a message, how long can you leave it before you have to turn that phone over and take a look? In fact, it's a phenomenon I observed years ago in meetings. People with their phones face down, but they just keep picking them up and looking at them to see if anything's come through, even though they've not pinged or they're on silent or whatever. So, you know, being immersed in this stuff leads to pleasure-seeking or validation-seeking behaviour. You know, we're looking sometimes to bolster our self-esteem by the posts we do. We're getting overwhelmed by out there. We're comparing ourselves to others. It can be a whole unholy mess.
It's incredibly toxic, actually, to a degree. I mean, Jane's just touched on the fact that it does have its positive aspects. And, you know, we do have a whole heap of people contacting us via social media now. We're able to reach more people and help more people. But one of the things that I do find really upsetting is that, you know, research has also shown that utilising digital devices, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is actually being used as an avoidance purpose for other important feelings that we have that we need to recognise and heal. So actually, I think it might have been the film The Social Network that was actually looking at teenagers and how they're they're so insular now, and their world is in their palm of their hand. No one even looks up properly. No one even looks up from their device. People are bumping into each other. We had this the other day. We're walking along, and people were actually watching a film whilst walking along on their phone and bumping into us. So actually just completely immersing themselves in that world, but also using it as a way to avoid things that actually probably do need to be addressed in their life, like healing, emotions, stuff that they just don't want to, and they're stuffing down with the use of technology.
I mean, I think it's a well-documented phenomenon as well, particularly with young generations, that on certain social media networks, they'll do things like, they'll put a post up,
and then
they're
take it
immediately
down.
monitoring to see how many likes or comments they get. If they don't feel they're getting enough, they'll take it down. And the worrying thing is, I think particularly for young girls, they're tempted to go more and more provocative to get a response. Definitely. But I even know people like in our age group that have used dating apps. I said, I've been feeling low, so I'll go on it and swipe loads to connect and just try and get comments to boost my self-esteem back up again.
We've completely lost the connection with ourselves.
It really
it's crazy. And before we jumped on to do this, we were just thinking, I feel so blessed. And we talk about this a lot between James and myself. Like, I feel so blessed that we were of a time and an era before we had phones, before we had mobile phones. And don't get me wrong, I was probably about 21 when I got my first phone. But I remember having to, we're going to go into this a little bit more, but having to remember phone numbers, to having to actually turn up on time to meet a date or to meet my friends.
Those happy days when you go up to a girl and go, here's 10p, love. She'd be going, what's that for? Like, phone your mum, tell her you won't be home tonight.
Oh, my goodness. And that's why I met James in a digital era, so he didn't do that. But yeah, it's just, we are the last generation, Generation X, midlifers. We're a generation that remember a time before we were consumed with comparison, before we were consumed with how we should live our lives and the highlight reels of everyone else's lives. And we just had our group, our community to kind of compare ourselves against, and that was it. But now we've got a whole myriad of messages being bombarded at us, and I just, even those, James mentioned, like, young girls, just see the provocative poses all over Instagram and TikTok. It is absolutely terrifying.
You sounded so old then. What is that thing? TikTok?
What is that thing? TikTok. See, I like that. I'm grateful for the fact that I sound old and I do not have a TikTok account.
Right, so let's look at some stats. So here we go. 90% of us use devices for more than 2 hours a day.
20% of Americans say their device is a cause of real stress.
Numerous studies have shown that even the presence of a device reduces your attention span and your task performance.
This is crazy. An article in Forbes said that 3 out of 5 people spend more time on their phone than with their partner. And we wonder why we have relationship issues.
Our attention span, this is like one, I think it came from the University of Connecticut, is widely reported, but it's fallen from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. And to put that in context, human beings now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish.
I think you had that anyway. And we have diminished cognitive function just off the back of that. We're using our phone to find information rather than recall it. Those phone numbers, remembering things, histories, like little tiny snippets of information. We don't need that anymore because we've got the World Wide Web.
I know, I think it's anecdotal, but they say like most people who are our age that grew up before this tech, you kind of had, I think it was the figure is you could remember 5 phone numbers off by heart. You had your home, your own, 2 or 3 others. Now people can't even remember their own phone number, let alone even their partner's phone number.
Can you remember your phone number?
Barely. But there was some nice research. I think it was University of Bristol, but I really love the way they did a lot of research this. But they actually created this really nice metaphor as the device, the phone we're talking about here, as a shell, as in a snail, as in like a home that you are carrying around with you. Now, some of you might be frowning, going, "Well, it doesn't make sense." But no, let me give you the context of this. If you've been in that situation where you're at a dinner with a bunch of people, and then you're aware someone's picked up their phone.
Oh, it's so awful.
They're like intent. They're just staring at it intently. For all intents and purposes, that person is no longer there. They're not engaged. They're not present. That's what I mean. Like, you're carrying your shell You go home, that phone, it has all your information, all your pleasures, everything. So you can retreat into your shell any time you want. You just pick up your phone, and I'm in my shell. I'm in my digital virtual home. So I thought it was just a really nice analogy.
I know, and it's being used as a validation. It's being used to, people are losing their ability. I know with teenagers now, I know that there's so much research as well around teenagers not being able to communicate and converse and feel comfortable communicating with other people. So they're disassociating themselves completely from society because their home is their phone. It's quite terrifying.
So there's a UK psychologist found a strong link between heavy internet use and depression. And also, those who spend a lot of time on social media are more likely to suffer from depression. It's a correlation between heavy Facebook use and depressive symptoms, including low self-esteem. It's going back to comparison thing. You know, people are seeing other people post their highlight reels and then feeling that their own life doesn't match up. And we're losing the ability to kind of filter, I guess, and put on our own critical lens of, you know, is what we're seeing really, really real anyway? Is it really true? You know, is that person's life that, you know, we all get those things in our feed. These people that have hired a Lamborghini and they're like lounging on the bonnet throwing dollar bills in the air, but actually, you know, they've rented it for an hour and they're going around picking up all the money afterwards. But, you know, we don't know that. We don't see it. So we start to think, oh, our life isn't really stacking up compared to what else is out there. But it's just fake. It's an illusion, essentially.
There was also another study said that the overuse of social media is actually linked to eating disorders. Obviously, we can imagine that. So a study found that women who spend long periods of time on social networks, such as Facebook and Instagram, have been found to have a higher number of incidences of appearance-focused behaviour, such as anorexia, and were more anxious and body-conscious overall. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, I know Instagram hasn't actually been around for that long. It's so part of our lives that we think it's been there for forever. But Instagram hasn't actually been there for that long. I think it only really entered my sphere of a social network when in 2016, 2017. And I have to say, it was a period of time when I definitely felt that. I felt that Instagram, of all things, was making me compare myself, not just physically, but also in our business. Oh, hang on a minute. What was that? There's a noise.
Someone with very squeaky brakes going by.
And actually, it really got me down. And I remember having to have a really, really strong word with myself, figure out what it was. Because some people, it's become so part of their lives, they don't actually know what's bringing them down and what's making them feel this way. So actually having a good look at my life and thinking I've been spending way too much time on Instagram comparing my body to other people and our business success to other businesses, and something's got to give here. And it is about coming back home to yourself and stop trying as hard as you can to limit. We're going to give these tips later, but limiting what you're doing there, because I can promise you it is deeply, deeply affecting your levels of anxiety and depression.
Yeah, well, most of these social networks actually are very heavily image focused, so it's no surprise that they are driving, you know, in higher levels of body dysmorphia, you know, for men and women.
I mean, we call it the fitness industry on they say, on Instagram, it's the fitness industry. There's nothing fit. It's all about bodies now. It's bodies.
And the thing is, everyone's manipulating. There's filters in place. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But it's interesting. I think it's one of the Scandinavian countries. Is it Norway? Possibly. So. It's introducing legislation that a user has to declare if they have altered their photos in any way, which I think would be really helpful. Because, of course, you know, we're seeing these people with seemingly perfect bodies, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. You know, and it's not real. They've probably like done a load of shoots at one place in time when they're just like trained to get in shape for that. Then they're using like loads of manipulation as well, and it's just causing all kinds of issues.
Well, it sucks. It's like an energy vampire. It sucks the gratitude and joy from your life, because you're constantly thinking, I'll only be happy when I look like that, or I have that, rather than actually just being really, really comfortable and grateful for what you have in your life right now. So the comparison trap is very real on social media.
Very real. The other thing, of course, is a lot of us, more and more of us, tending to take our phones to bed with us, which is not a good thing to do. Passion killer there. But not only for the reason of it being a passion killer, but the actual blue light that's produced by the phones affects our hormone melatonin. So it actually ends up making us feel more alert and awake at the very time we should be like falling sleepy. And that's before we factor in, whatever we're looking at. If we're looking at emails or, posts that are affecting us some way, we're going to get our stress response going as well. So we're going to come on to tips, but phones in bed is just a no-no.
I slip up on this still sometimes, and very rarely now, but there's sometimes, if I'm still WhatsApping someone, a friend or anything like that, and I've got my phone, I've taken it into the bedroom to carry on WhatsApping them. Even if I've then put it away out of the bedroom, but I've been on it like half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour before bedtime, I'm definitely more wired, definitely more awake when I turn that light off and want to start going to sleep. I'm definitely more wired from having my phone even on me for that 20 minutes or 30 minutes
for sure.
beforehand.
I noticed it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
it is interesting that more and more legislation is starting to be talked about or come in. So we mentioned there that in one of the Scandinavian countries, having to declare if you've altered your image. China is bringing in this law to limit children to no more than 4 hours a day of gaming because they're getting increasingly worried about kids just spending hours immersed in these virtual worlds. And this is something I think we need to be aware of going forward. We're kind of looking at digital and technology as it is now.
Oh, I know.
But it's only going to get more advanced and become easier and easier. That virtual world will become more and more seductive, a place you can escape to and be someone else, be something else rather than doing the hard work in the reality.
Well, I don't know whether any of you this is just something that James and I did when we went to an exhibition a few weeks ago here in London, and we put these, the virtual world got glasses on that took you.
Oh, the Van Gogh immersive is a brilliant exhibition.
Unbelievable! It was incredible, but you put these glasses on, and then you get taken into this incredible virtual world of Van Gogh, and as well as it being utterly stunning, and it was magical, and I came away thinking, oh my goodness, it was actually worrying how much I enjoyed it to a degree, because like James was just saying, we had a whole conversation around this. You're not going to need to go anywhere. This is going to become, look how fast technology has advanced in a few years. That is going to become a world that is accessible to everyone. So you put your little goggles on and you go into your own world and you can go anywhere. The next step of that is kind of like putting a bodysuit on probably and actually feeling the sensations on your skin without having to move from your comfortable sofa. It is absolutely terrifying what's coming. And, that's why me going to Scotland and actually not just really stepping away from everything and just being in nature was incredible, because I thought to myself, there is such a heavy advancement of technology, and we are losing more of our connection to reality so quickly every day.
We are. So we've given you some pretty good reasons there to do a digital detox, but how do you actually go about it? Well, first of all, look, we want to say it's not really realistic for the majority of us to totally eliminate technology and devices from our lives. They become linked. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to go off tangent here, Claire, actually. It's interesting. If any of you, like as a kid, I used to read all these science books and be fascinated. And they had a theme that technology would put us in a place by the time that we're at now, that we'd actually have so much leisure time because technology would have taken up the slack on a lot of repetitive and boring tasks. And we live in this new kind of paradigm where technology had freed us up to have more free time. But actually, the reverse has happened. Technology has made us, in fact, more slaves, because we are now in a situation where, in the old days, my dad, when he went to work, his day started when he actually got in the office and got behind his desk. He would be able to get phone calls, he'd get papers brought to him. And his day finished when he left that office building. But for us now, we know, like, as soon as you're up and your devices are on, you're expected to be in contact and responding to stuff. So it's interesting how the capability is there to enable this freedom, but we've used it the other way.
Can you remember Blackberries? I'm going off on a tangent now. Blackberries. I had a Blackberry, and that was what email came in on. And I remember having my phone, and you couldn't link up your mobile phone at one stage, obviously, to your work email. So then they started giving out Blackberries. So then you had that. And I remember carrying 2 phones around. And I remember even feeling like that was encroaching on my time where I was on the train, where I'd normally read or listen to something on YouTube, because YouTube was around then. But I almost felt that them handing me a Blackberry was a noose around my neck, and I was becoming this slave where I didn't even get time when I was doing my commute.
No, but what's interesting is we go back, at the time, BlackBerry was nicknamed crackberries because they were
Yes.
so addictive. But all it was a black and white email device. So,
Yep.
you know.
Carrying around 2 phones. It's crazy times.
So how do we start eliminating in some way? Because it's not practical just to dump your
Here's
phone
10
down the
tips.
toilet or put it in a bin. But here's number 1. Start by setting boundaries. So set some time limits on your usage. Most phones have somewhere, if you go into settings, you can see how much you have been on it in any given kind of week or day or whatever. So I suggest starting there. Have a look at how much you are using it currently. And then you can get various different apps. There's one called Moment, there's one called Freedom, another one called Off Time. They could basically all work in similar ways. Either like you can actually throttle your only time on there, like set limits when you can go on and off, or it will just tell you how long you've spent and send you warnings about you overdoing it. So, but definitely start by setting boundaries and your time limits on your usage.
This takes discipline, by the way, and hopefully we're giving you enough reason here to discipline yourself because of all the things that we are actually losing, all that connection that we are losing, and we're just becoming slaves to our mobile phones. So it is your responsibility to discipline yourself around this. And moving on from that is number 2. It's also your responsibility and a discipline to clean your feed. So watch what you are feeding yourself, not just in your mouth, but what your eyes and ears, your senses are really, really feeling. Become even aware of how you feel, by the way, when you're looking at your device. So we've completely disconnected to how we're feeling. So actually think, have I come away from that feeling good? Am I feeling good right now? Actually, have I just scrolled through social media and actually started feeling anxious, depressed? What is that? Because you need awareness in order to move you on, to change, to inspire you to change. So actually just realising that you went on fine and you've looked on social media and now you don't feel fine, well, that's an indicator that you need to do what James just said, which is set boundaries, and then do what I've just said, which is clean your feed.
It's so true. I mean, I'd just be honest with yourself, you know, like...
Are you feeling any good?
Look at what's triggering you and how you're feeling, and if you feel like kind of almost compelled to respond. You know, I always say it's like you can suddenly realise you spent 3 hours arguing with a stranger on the internet. You know, you're not going to change their mind. Like your own peace
waste of time.
Is worth more. And we forget we can change our feed. You know, I've got a feed now of like motivational slogans, sloths, happy dogs,
puppies.
Yeah. And then I'm aware when I see stuff that triggers me, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to snooze that for 30 days, or just get rid of it completely.
Well,
so
get off
so
your
do
phone.
That.
Let's just get off our phones.
The other thing to do, stuff that isn't vital to your business life, I'd say, or your personal life, turn off notifications. Remember, they trigger that dopamine surge. So turn those off just to get rid of that.
Well, anxiety as well. I think, sorry, mum and dad, if you are listening to this, but I just really...
they're the Sky News alert.
They're closest to me, and, you know, we spend time with them, and they've got notifications beeping on their phones, both phones going at the same time, from Sky News, BBC, all of this stuff. And actually, I can even feel myself being around that, getting anxious whenever that beep goes off, because I know that that's the Sky News notification. And it really creates this kind of sense of anxiety in myself. Also, just put the device away, okay? When you are in close proximity to your phone, you are more tempted to pick it up. This is why I put mine in a drawer all last weekend. So just, once it's there, you're going to be waiting, keep picking it up. So just lock it away.
Remember, even if you can see it, your attention and your performance is diminished. So just start with things. You know, put it in a different room for like half an hour, then an hour, 2 hours.
It's crazy we have to do this, isn't it?
It is. Have a one screen rule. This one's massive. Like, how often have you found yourself actually watching TV and scrolling on your phone? I mean, I have seen people with like the TV, an iPad, and a phone on the go. You don't need it. Why have you got 2 or 3 screens on the go? Have a one screen rule. Put your focus on one thing at a time.
That's why our attention span is getting less and less and less, because we're just so
fractured.
So fractured. Our attention is so fractured. Get back to pen and paper. I love this.
I love pen and paper. Scribble.
Do you know what? I write in a journal every day, every morning, every evening. I love putting pen to paper the old school way. Just do things and just get off that dopamine hit of your phone.
Remove it from the bedroom. Listen, You don't want this like glowing thing sat in the corner all night.
Beep, beep.
You don't need it in bed. And I know people are like, oh, it's my alarm clock. Yeah, go and buy another one. You can buy an alarm clock for like less than £5. Just go and buy an alarm clock and use that. Just take your phone out of the bedroom.
Have device-free time scheduled in. So if it's not scheduled, it's not happening. So your partner, your relationships, your children, your happiness, your health, your well-being is more important than what's going on social media or your emails. It absolutely is. So it's your responsibility yet again to have that free time schedule to go and reconnect with yourself, to reconnect with your partners, your children, and set a really, really good example actually for the generations to come. Because I tell you what, if they're seeing you not giving yourself free time away from your device, you're just making the problem worse and worse.
A lot of the times we're using these devices to kind of fill time or distract, as we said. So actually start thinking about some what we call displacement activities, stuff that's going to replace your phone. So yeah, when you're there and you go, oh, it's my device-free time, but now I'm really like stuck for what to do. No, start thinking things like get a novel to read, write a novel, go and make a new recipe, go and speak to your neighbour, go and speak to a friend, go for a walk. Just have activities ready to go that replace that aimless screen time.
I just want to say on this as well, I think a lot of people are so afraid now because they're not in touch with their emotions and they're so afraid to actually go into a place where they feel. It's almost like we've forgotten to feel. I did a live on this morning. You know, it's a constant unnumbing, and what social media does is just numb us out even more. It's mind-numbing activities. That's what the digital age has done. It's numbed our sense of connection, and it's a perfect way to numb out our own feelings. And, you know, sadly, unless you, again, take responsibility for healing some of the things that are bringing you down, that are creating such anxiety, things that you want to change, you know, things that you want to change in your life, you're going to have to put your attention on that rather than your phone. So one of the things I would say as well as that is just be really, really aware when you're feeling an emotion. That's normally when you're going to pick up the phone. If you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling anxious, you're trying to get that dopamine hit again. You're trying to, you know, get some self-esteem from somewhere, some confidence from somewhere, but it's so short-lived. It's actually not seeking it within. All you need is within you. I know that might sound really hippie and woo-woo, but everything you need is within you. And most of us are too afraid now to go within and check in with ourselves and do the work in order to overcome and heal ourselves so we live an awesome life. And I would just stop using, if you can, your mobile phone to distract yourself from those emotions, because that's certainly what I did over the last weekend, and I've come out such a better person for it, like a much more grounded person for myself, for my relationships, and for all of you guys as well, hopefully. Take a device holiday. I know we're saying about taking breaks in the day, little snacks of the day where you don't look at your phone, but actually take an entire device holiday. If you can, and you've got your family around you and they don't need to contact you, and you know you can get away with having your phone put aside for a couple of days, you will see a phenomenal difference in your energy levels, your happiness, your well-being, your thoughts. You'll start seeing things to be more grateful for and stop comparing yourself. You are just beautiful the way you are. So we need to stop comparing ourselves to everyone else on social media. So actually connecting ourselves with ourselves again is a really, really important part of why we wanted to do this podcast.
Yeah. We hope you found that interesting and useful, and we would love to hear how you are getting on with the digital detox, or any tips you might want to share with the listeners on, you know, how to successfully detox digitally,
and how it's impacted your world. Love to hear how it's potentially impacted your world, what you might have done. I think another thing that we've seen a lot is lots of clients say, oh, you know, I am worried for my children. They're on their phones all the time. But then obviously it's an easier thing to give them a phone. But how's that working out for you with your children, for example? We don't have children. So with your children, are you worried about their usage on digital platforms and social media? What are you doing to ensure that they look up from their device and that they don't use it as their home, and that actually they're able to connect with other human beings? Because it's never more important than now. That's it.
Indeed.
Right. That's us. We are sending you so much love, and we will catch up with you next week.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.